Welcome to an extremely special edition of From Prison to Pastor. Pastor Rich has asked his friend, Pastor Kent, who is in Minneapolis right now on the scene, been there since Thursday, to tell us what is it like in this city that is hurting, in the city that is seeing history in the making, tragedy. And I'm just so thankful that Pastor Kent, you were able to make time for us. He has many videos and pictures that he's going to show us, and he's going to take us through what's going on, including on Friday. There were some pastors that were arrested, and he was there. He's got pictures, and he's been a clergy observer on the scene at these protests, and also offer us some healing, because so many of us are traumatized right now by watching government sanctioned murder, and we're struggling right now. And I know that both of you are as well. So this is going to be, what is it like on the ground? How do we handle this humanely, fighting social justice peacefully? And just warm big hugs to everybody watching, because this is hard. And thank you so much, Pastor Rich. Thank you for being here. Pastor Kent, how are you today? And thank you so much for joining us.
Great pleasure. Thank you for making time and space for this. It matters.
Oh, this is going to be, I'm going to cry, and I apologize, but I'm going to do my best. But This is, yeah, you're there on the scene. Okay, so you are there representing the Kentucky Council of Churches.
That's
which
right.
I know Rich is also involved with, which is a wonderful organization. It's thousands of churches, I believe, that
It's
work
1,100.
together.
Yeah. We're about 1,100 churches in 11 denominations in 16 different regional bodies, and so it's Catholics and Baptists and Lutherans and Episcopalians and everything in between, Methodist, Presbyterian, UCC. So yeah, it's an incredible coalition. When you say, Rich?
Nope.
I had my mic. I had my mic muted. Yeah, I think Council of Churches, is the Commonwealth of Kentucky's ecumenical chapter, and we're in a process of doing some rebuilding and making sure that we have a shared Christian witness, that it reflects the mandates of Jesus of Nazareth, who I'll say sarcastically might be important for Christian people.
Pastor Kent, what church are you a pastor of?
Right. I serve Union Church in Berea, Kentucky. Union Church has an interesting history. It was an ecumenical entity from its very origins, because it was the first abolitionist church to survive. We were founded before the Civil War, opposing slavery in a slaveholding state. And so they kind of needed every living abolitionist they could find. So we've always been an intentional ecumenical community of Episcopalians, Baptists, Congregationalists, Methodists.
I'd love to know the Underground Railroad history, which I'm sure they didn't keep a lot of records of for people's safety. That's fascinating. Yeah. What an amazing church. Wow.
Yeah.
So I feel like history is repeating itself a little bit.
It seems like the lessons of the past might be needed again in the future, does it not?
Yes. And I'm just so thankful that there are so many pastors calling this out, stepping out and saying, this is wrong, this is inhumane, this is not Christian, this is not whatever other religion people are following. I'm just very grateful to you all for doing this. So the Council of Churches, you represented them, and you flew out on Thursday to Minneapolis?
I did. I came on Thursday. Partners here in Minnesota sent a call nationwide for clergy to gather if they could. And I think they were a little surprised by the response. Organizers told me they'd hoped they might get 1 or 2 people from every state. 1,250 people responded, and dropped everything, as I was able to do, thanks to the support of a lot of people back home, including Pastor Rich. And we were able to be on the ground for a full day of training on Thursday in advance of what the Minnesota local entities had called for, a citywide strike and a march to honor the life of Renee Good, who was shot and killed almost a week and a half ago now. And the hope was that clergy would come and be able to be a bear witness, but also to be a resource to those who are, as you mentioned, traumatized. This is a city that has been brutally occupied. And whatever you've seen or your viewers have watched on the news is nothing compared to what it's like on the ground. Armed guards with long guns and no identification, walking up and down streets, bashing in windows, taking people out of their cars. It is, in fact, like entering a movie scene. It's crazy. And at the same time, 3 blocks away, it's suburbia for now. And people are trying best as they can to go on with life as normal. So it is extremely difficult to dip between this reality and that reality all the time for residents here. Clergy came to try to offer prayer, to offer support. And by clergy, I mean, not just Christian clergy responded. I was in a training group that included a Sikh pastor, a Sufi, a Jewish rabbi, Catholic priest, 3 nuns, myself, Lutherans. We were every tradition gathered here for peace and to witness to a moral rectitude that is sadly lacking in our federal forces right now.
You're already making me feel better because I feel so hopeless. I feel so sad for everybody hurt, for the people being killed, for their family, and just to know I'm not alone here. You all are, everybody, we're watching this. And you all stepped up. These pastors have stepped up, have flown out. All these people are standing up in this city saying this is wrong, and they're doing it in a peaceful, loving way. And we need to know this is happening. Another thing I have been following is some of the people in Minneapolis have been organizing to give food to immigrants to keep them in their houses. And I thought that was really beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Heartbreaking that we have to do this, but just so wonderful that the money, that the organizing, that the people are doing that. My own friend, who she has to have a fake name to keep her identity safe. We call her the helpful hippie. She raised money and drove out there so that she could deliver food. And so she's out there now. Just people are stepping up and doing what they can. So yeah. Can you take us through? So you landed on Thursday, and then feel free to just start showing us your pictures.
Sure.
Because I want to know, what is it actually like being there? And plus it's really cold. It's 7 degrees here.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine being outside right now.
It's -12 as I speak here. And on the day of the march, it was -10 with a 30-mile-an-hour wind. So it was a -30 wind chill, and still 50,000 people came out.
What day was 50,000 people out there?
That was Friday. I'll walk you through.
Walk us through.
On Thursday, as I said, on Thursday, all the clergy gathered. You're looking at a picture here, and I apologize. There's going to be some interspersed pictures because it's hard to slide through, but most of the thing. I wanted to show that we gathered as clergy for training first. And I think one of the most important things I would say to everybody who's listening is that, resistance is most effective when you have got a plan. It's spontaneous is good, but it rarely leads to the sustained change that we're all looking for. So our plan as clergy, we gathered in multiple locations, but we gathered for a full solid day of training, by which I mean we educated ourselves about who was going to be our partners in this. And all of us had small groups that we were responsible to and to check on, so that if things went sideways, we had people who had our backs, even though we were from all over the country. In addition, we learned about what has been the tactic and history of Border Patrol in Minneapolis, and it has not been pretty. We got a real on-the-ground education from the churches, the church pastors, the faith leaders, the rabbis, the indigenous communities that have been so brutally affected.
So you got there and they just immediately took you someplace and trained you. Here's what you need to know about this situation. That sounds pretty smart. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. And in that training, we then organized around several actions. Again, this was a coalition of partners, not just clergy. Clergy were coming alongside of organizations like Isaiah is one, and I think you'll find the link, and March, Minnesota, which is another fantastic organization. These organizations have been organizing Minnesotans for a long time. Sadly, Minnesota has had to have a lot of cooperation around some hard things. Everyone will remember George Floyd's murder and that live on TV, which tore apart an entire country, but it certainly devastated the very same neighborhood where Renee Good was shot. So there was already out of those very, very bitter seeds have grown some really, really sweet fruit. That is to say, this cooperative nature and spirit and the connection.
So you're saying because of past traumas, there's
Minnesota
been organizing, there's been
on.
building, there's been nonviolent, and then religious to organizations stepping up to try to lessen the violence.
And because they were organized and knew each other, I mean, and by organized, I mean, I think people maybe freak out about like organized, like what is that? That's really just creating a relationship. Like, you know who to call. That's
it's
organized.
Connections. It's connecting everybody together that's trying to help and saying, oh, you have this knowledge. Can you send it to us? We have this knowledge. We'll send it to you. We're doing this event. Can you promote it? Because I do that in Indiana, trying to save Indiana is a lot of organizing and just connections.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of me in my bundled up space. One of the things that we organized for, along with partners here, we did several major actions. There were 5 different things that we were traveling across the city in prior to a 2 p.m. march. In the morning, I was assigned to a team that was going to be part of the clergy who were going to make us an act of civil disobedience to protest the fact that the airport and Delta Airlines in particular has been cooperating with ICE, renting their planes and space to the Border Patrol to deport or literally abduct over 1,800 Minnesotans in just the month of January.
I did not know that.
So we went to the departures. We had made careful arrangements. We had called the police. They had designated a place for us to protest for a certain number of us. About 1,000 people, Minnesotans and clergy, showed up. And 100 clergy had trained, prayed, and agreed that they would violate that stricture to stay within the zone, that they would step outside of the zone as a way of directing attention. Now, I want to stress again, we prayed and trained for this. This is not something that
this wasn't you had planned to do this, to go against, to make a stand, to shine a light on this social injustice.
Absolutely. Right. And like when people ask, what can they do to help? Well, of course you can support these agencies and support your locals, but I will just say again and again and again, get trained. You can do online training about what is authoritarianism and what's worked in other countries to resist authoritarianism. What can we do just as individuals? You're not a person who goes out on the line and gets arrested. Everybody should be. But for those 100, for every one of the 100, there were 4 of us behind them, right? Making sure that they had lawyers, making sure we had heat, making sure that they had warm clothing. We had prepared because they were going to kneel and pray in minus 30-degree weather.
Wow.
We had pads for them to kneel on so they did not literally freeze their legs off.
This just reminds me of the Freedom Riders. This reminds me of the Civil Rights Movement because it was organized, it was planned. They knew they were going to get arrested. So it sounds similar to that. It sounds like, learning. What
it was like to be there. There were people from all walks of life in this. But I also think that the clergy brought a particular witness, which was one of just courageous resistance, but in peace. Right. The difference between suppression, where you go in and you make peace by locking everybody up, that's quiet. That's not peace. All of the religious faith leaders from every tradition were there to make peace. That is to say, peace can only happen when the well-being of every person, including the people who you are oppressing, is counted for.
So the video you just showed us, this was at the airport on Friday.
This is the airport on Friday. I say more than 1,000 people showed up here.
And then they had planned. And so were those people arrested?
They were. I have pictures here I'll get there.
Our streets! Our streets!
A lot of folks who were angry. Minnesotans are really, really tired of this.
And Minnesotans are such like a beautiful people. Like they're so kind. Like, have you all met Minnesotans before? I mean, they're just lovely humans.
You've said it right. You've said it right.
And it hurts my heart that this national government is painting them out to be like a violent place where they have to come in. They have
Indeed.
to. And it's just like, that's not accurate.
These are the clergy. Standing in front of you there are the clergy who will be arrested.
Everybody's got a right to live. Every form is every fail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to dream. Everybody's got a right to live. And before the stand jail, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live.
Wow, that was beautiful. I just want to comment, when you see a picture, it looks scary. It looks a mass amount of people. What are they doing? They could be violent. You show the video, they're singing beautiful, what, hymns or spirituals or something?
We had it all. We had everything.
And you can see, oh no, this isn't a violent crowd. This is a brave group of people calling out this violence and asking for it to stop. So I'm really thankful that we have that video.
I want to strengthen that point because, of course, one of the things that having outside observers from different places like Kentucky matters. Why that matters is because that the administration's narrative is that this is a dangerous crowd, that these people are all wanton killers, that it takes this kind of brutality to keep them in line. And I just want to point out that there were 50,000 people. We did 5 nonviolent but technically illegal actions, and not a single person, not a single incident to my knowledge involved any violence at all. And yet the very next morning, ICE agents brutally executed a bystander who was just trying to help a woman who got pushed over. It is the contrast here. I think Governor Walz made a press conference on Saturday afternoon and said it quite well. He says, I want you to stop. We're not going to refer to ICE as law enforcement anymore. They're not enforcing the laws. They are the only ones breaking them.
Right. That's a good way to put it. I saw a new picture out and I can't put it out. I can't look at it. I saw a new picture out this morning that somebody had gotten a picture of him right before he was murdered. And it is very clear he posed no threat. And hearing the Kristi Noem talk about the way they said what happened, I don't know whether I fully grasp the dangers of what this national government is doing until I listen to that. Yeah. I mean, I knew everything was bad. I've been worried for a while, but it just is like, it's just taken it to a new level of the amount of just lies, just lying with the national government, big position people, just plain out lying about what happened when we have evidence. And that's, I think, where the trauma is coming from all of us watching this. Yes, Rich.
Yeah, let's just jump in for a minute and mention this. You know, we are being propagandized.
Yes.
Okay, by the federal government, unabashedly, unashamedly. So propagandized means to take this narrative or the story and to lie about it and twist it. And I think it's important for people to understand that the purpose of lying isn't so that you believe the lie. It's so that you don't believe anything.
That's right.
The purpose, or one of the technologies or strategies of authoritarian regimes is also to, of course, divide people, right? And separate people. And so when you propagandize a population, right, which is lying through the mechanisms of the state or the government to cast suspicion on people, then what happens is our basic civic unit, which is our neighbors, become suspects. And instead of creating what some people will call curiosity and opportunity for relationship, we begin to view one another in the society as suspects and dangerous. And so this has always been true for indigenous Native American peoples or American Indian peoples, the descendants of African peoples here who were brought here to these shores and kidnapped. And now what we're seeing is that the reality of what many Black and indigenous leaders have been saying to us in the United States for at least since about 1492, that if one group of people can be targeted in a nation which says we hold these truths to be self-evident and uses the language of inalienable rights, but then strips those rights from people, we know that at base level there is an inherent hypocrisy. And we've had the opportunity, and we now have a different kind of opportunity in our society to actually push for liberty and justice for all. But if all is not all people, right, then we know that we remain under the hypocrisy. So to uphold the hypocrisy, we must be lied to, we must be propagandized, we must be made to suspect our neighbors and fellow human beings of being dangerous and that kind of thing.
I feel like we're starting to catch on to that, because I sent this to you yesterday, an SNL skit from Saturday. My husband sent it to me because I don't stay up that late. He sent it to me where it was a news people talking about what's going on in Minneapolis, and it was two Black news anchors, and then it was white people commenting, and they're saying stuff like, "We've never seen this before." And they go, and I thought it was a funny way to point out, yes, we have seen this before, but it's new to white Americans.
So you know what we have not seen before?
What's that?
We haven't seen 1,200 clergy and masses amount of white Americans and white pastors of all creeds and confessions, whether they're Jewish, Unitarian, Muslims, Christians of various creeds and communions, coming together and saying, this ain't right. This needs to stop now. We haven't not actually seen this in the nation, and
that's where I'm hopeful. Aren't you both hopeful? I've got two things. I'm hopeful that we are going to push for change and actually have some positive ones, and I'm fearful how many more people are going to be hurt until the change happens. Those are my two biggest feelings.
Yeah, I think we will continue to see abuses, and we'll probably have another public execution by the federal government of another human being, probably another American citizen. Does it really matter if they're a citizen or not? But let me say this point though. There's some really interesting dynamics occurring, because to me anyway, about this concept of rights. If your rights can be stripped away, they are not rights. They're not inalienable. They're not God-given, right? They are privileges granted to us, the governed, by the government. This is actually a foundational idea within American government, which has never, of course, been lived out for all people. But I want to make a couple points here. So I often talk about, and I'm asked to talk about, the fact that I can't vote. I don't have any right to vote in the United States of America, right? That's governed by the states on states' rights, which goes back to the intentional construction of our government to endorse, approve, and support the slave economy, all right? The connecting point I want to make is that our First Amendment rights are being threatened, of freedom of speech, right? Freedom of assembly, freedom to exercise our religious ways. So for example, part of my vows of my being a Lutheran pastor says that every ordained minister is to speak in solidarity with the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed, and to work for justice in the world. That's free exercise of my religion. That is being threatened. We also see Fourth Amendment rights being threatened, unlawful search, seizure, and detainment by agents of the government, right? We are seeing 14th Amendment due process rights. And we have a nation of people who actually do not realize that the Constitution and the laws of the nation, anybody under the jurisdiction of the nation, is entitled to constitutional protection, period. And what happened with Alex Freddie is a very interesting thing, because now Second Amendment rights are threatened. Wherever you fall on the spectrum of your ideas about the Second Amendment, it is part of the Constitution. And he was a gun owning, concealed carry permit legal gun carrying and owning.
He was allowed to have that on
Absolutely.
him.
And
he didn't use it. It was in his back pocket, or it was in his behind him, right? He never touched it during this interaction.
But my point is a larger picture. The constant and consistent erosion of what we've been told are our constitutional rights in the nation. And so what we see, that the loudest voices, going back just say to the Tea Party, right, in recent memory, were emphatic and ravenous about Second Amendment rights and warning about big government and all these things. But all of a sudden, as this actually happens, is actually literally happening on the streets of an American city, what we see is the exposure yet again of many Americans' ignorance and hypocrisies, which is to say
we haven't had to, Rich.
Hold on.
We haven't had to worry about it. We've taken that for granted.
But what we've been told, though, many of us who grew up around conservative spaces in our younger years are told that, they're going to take away our guns, they're going to force X, Y, and Z on us, right? What I want to point out here, to try to complete my thought here, is that we're seeing the hypocrisy and the ignorance of the American public in many ways, by not being able to make the connections. And then with our conservative siblings and fellow human beings, that they don't hold these values, right, as matters of principle. They hold them as matters of identity politics. There's no intellectual or moral consistency,
right,
in the propaganda and in the spewing. So I'll just close with this. The President of the United States, the Vice President, Kristi Noem, I forget her formal title, Kash Patel, Director of the FBI, has said publicly that if a person is carrying a firearm to a protest, that is illegal. So I want to ask the question to many of our conservative siblings: where is the consistency of your value set? Because if they're stripping away, folks cannot vote in this country. We have taxation without representation. Our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to redress, complaint, and protest to the government, right? Freedom of religious expression, protest for many of us is part of our religious expression, are being challenged. Our Fourth Amendment rights are being challenged. Our 14th Amendment rights are being challenged. And now we have seen, with the public execution of Alex Freddie, an assault on Second Amendment rights. So,
and Rich, I think I want to underscore and say that they're not being assaulted; they are being ignored. In Minnesota, Minneapolis, they are being ignored. On Thursday, just as we arrived, clergy were all given full warning and full word that Kristi Noem had declared of her own free will, apparently, that ICE agents did not need to abide by the Fourth Amendment. That's unwarranted search and seizure. That means literally they don't need a judge's warrant to search somebody's home, to break into somebody's car, to detain you or not give any information about where you have been detained.
These are reasons why we had the American Revolution, because of the search and seizure.
That's exactly right.
The reasons why we were like, we need to have our freedom away from England because they are not giving us our rights. They shouldn't be able to go into our homes without our permission. And so that is happening now.
That's right.
Yes.
And as Pastor Rich made a point of that the Supreme Court has said, let me just point out, it was Antonin Scalia, one of the most conservative of the recent justices, who affirmed that the law in the United States applies to everyone who is in the United States, not a citizen of the United States. No. That is to say, protection of the law is not a privilege one is granted with citizenship. It is a fact of location. In the borders of the United States, U.S. law should apply to everyone, whether you are the president or a pauper or an immigrant. It did not matter. And
I just see that getting worse in the last few years. Yeah. The people that are struggling, that don't have a lot of money, that don't have the connections, they are just constantly told they don't matter and that they don't have rights. And then the people that are powerful, that have money, that have lawyers, they have so much more rights than the rest of us. And the injustice of it is infuriating to me.
Yeah, well, I think maybe what we might do here, if you all are okay with this, is just put a pin in where we are. And a lot of times, in conversations like this, we get to a point where maybe listeners are like, okay, what do we do? Where do we go? So I
Right.
wanted to
That's a good.
kind of put a plug in. Pastor Kent mentioned training, right? There's a lot of groups that hold training around issues. So here in the region, Ohio River Valley region around Louisville, right? LSurge, the local Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice, provides training on a number of different things.
So if you are in the Louisville area and you wanted to get training, where should they go to? What should they
look up LSurge.
LSurge, LSURGE.
J.
J-E?
It's an acronym, Showing Up for Racial Justice.
Okay.
LSurge, local ACLU chapters provide different kinds of trainings. Trainings that are pushed out all over the place.
Yeah, there are free trainings virtually all the time.
Pastor Kent would recommend the website March Minnesota, just like it sounds, one word together, marchminnesota.org. We also encourage people to look at freedomtrainers.net. I know Pastor Kent and I both have been trained through Freedom Trainers Network.
And I should say, Rich, today has been clergy and others have called for a national day of training today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
So you will find, just with a Google search, you should find any number of anti-authoritarian trainings. Educate yourself. You can do that. There's trainings, everything from just like, what is happening to me, all the way up to how do I organize a neighborhood watch group, down to how do I survive a tear gas attack. Right now, God willing, not everybody's going to need all of that, but everybody needs something.
Yeah, absolutely. So
especially if you're wanting to go to a peaceful protest, I think
this
point we all need to be trained. We can't just show up
and do I believe firmly in the philosophy of nonviolence. That's nonviolence without a hyphen. And I just point out, right, that in my own talking, I don't use the term peaceful protest, because one of the principles of nonviolence is to create and precipitate crisis, but not through nonviolence. In other words, it's to dramatize and highlight abuses that are happening without destruction of people and property, right, for the purpose of calling attention and moral authority to the issue. And that's what was happening. If you look, Pastor Kent mentioned 50,000. I've heard reports that there were 75,000 people. Either number is massive. No destructions of property, no violence, disciplined with, again, faith leaders from all expressions here in this nation saying we're at a moral tipping point. And that's what we have not seen in the nation. This didn't happen.
And we don't have this at sporting events. It's sporting events when their team wins and they go out and there's thousands of people. They're like tearing down light poles and stuff.
Kentuckians, about the couches. Don't burn no couches anymore.
Listen, man.
Just the fact that they're pulling this off is a human extraordinary thing that we need to acknowledge. This is amazing that you can get that many people in this freezing cold so hurt and upset about what's happening, and it's peaceful and it's not being portrayed that. We get that, but that is incredible to me.
Yeah, so it is a testimony to the organizing and the training, right?
And the training. Yeah, I think that's the thing I want to say is that, yes, people did show up spontaneously, but they were able to show up spontaneously because a critical mass of individuals and organizations had prepared through their lives and their lifestyle for this moment. That is, they got organized, they got training, they offered loving resistance, they offered careful planning. They were able to offer careful communications, both with authorities. I want to point out that the police you may have seen in those earlier pictures were extremely professional. They were the Bloomington City Police at the airport action that I was a part of. They were extremely professional. They stayed calm. They stayed away. They were very gentle with the clergy they arrested. They asked the clergy, I thought this was wonderful, those police officers acting lawfully and with care and professionalism, asked the clergy once they were arrested, read them their rights, asked them to stand, and they said, would you just please put your hands behind your back as we put you on the bus that was going to take them for booking. They did not even handcuff them. They just asked them, just make it look like you're wearing handcuffs. That's training. That's professionalism. And I want you to contrast that with the way that ICE agents, who are clearly poorly trained, they are very little more than just jackbooted thugs. And I believe it was the Atlantic or maybe the New York Times that reported that up to 30 of them have histories in the Proud Boys, have histories in white supremacy movements. They were the ones who started the Charlottesville riots, right? Not the ones who went through careful training and have been formed by a notion of protection. No, they've been formed by a notion of harm. Peaceful nonviolence, as Pastor Rich talks about it, is a matter of creating environments over and over through discipline. And it takes everybody in the system for that to work.
Yeah.
And,
So
and being nonviolent doesn't mean violence doesn't happen. It's that you don't do the violence. And I think people are getting upset about that. They don't quite understand it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to start the video.
Oh, no, you can start the video. We can watch it if you'd like.
I thought you might like to see what 75,000 people. Yeah. And
what day is this? Is this Friday?
This was Friday. This was Friday afternoon. As I say, the air temperature was -10, -9, and the wind chill was -30.
So my favorite sign there was the leave us a loon.
Yeah.
Loon duck.
Let me put a pin in here just a second. Say a couple things about what Kent was talking about. So there's a couple kind of underattended kind of points about the arrests, in my opinion, to the airport, the clergy at the airport. Number one, I think people need to be reminded that it is entirely constitutional. It's a constitutionally protected activity to record law enforcement in the course of their duties. This is the law of the land. And when citizens use these little devices that most of us have, right, that have camera and video, it's a type of level of accountability to record. And I have said publicly, and will continue to say that government agents who are doing honorable work don't need to hide and cover their identities. But the citizenry using the phone and the recording device is another layer of accountability. It's also significant that the vast majority of people arrested were white clergy members, and that was intentional too in the planning.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because here's the reality: if the government will execute a 37 or 36-year-old white woman with impunity on the streets of an American city and then kill an ICU nurse who works at the VA taking care of our veterans, who, as a matter of identity politics, is always shouted about in political circles, and they will execute that white man. What do you think is happening in detention facilities and other spaces and places? I mean, I myself know a lot about this. We've talked about this before. This is from Prison to Pastor show, So I just want to point that out, right?
Yeah, thanks for saying that.
Again, what are we seeing in terms of rights? Now, there may be listeners who look at some of the videos and stuff, and they're like, no way, this is terrible, whatever. What a wonderful place to live where you can have an opinion that differs from what the three of us are saying.
Yep.
The principle that allows people to have opinion without retribution or threat of government violence is the rights which are being stripped away from us all right now. So as some people are saying, if you voted for this, right, and now you're like, holy cow, or holy something else, I can't do this, or I don't support this. You see what's really happening with your own eyes. NRA members, are you okay with the United States government, from the president on down to the director of the FBI, saying that if you carry a gun in public to a protest, that's illegal? Are you okay with that? The stripping of one right or rights from one group of people always trickles down. It's kind of like the failure of trickle-down economics, trickle-down rights. So it's not too late for you to say, I don't agree with these, whatever you want to call me and Kent, left-wing, whatever, pastors. I'll point out again, I'm not a member of any political party. In fact, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I cannot register.
You can't vote. So yeah.
I can't listen. I just point this out about rights. I cannot be a member of a political party because I cannot register to vote. If I registered to vote, just registering at the DMV when I get a driver's license or something, even if I did that, is a felony offense in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So the point is not to decry me personally. I still am exercising my First Amendment rights, right? But it's to point out, as these things are happening and we're being propagandized against our neighbors, right? To look, we have a problem, and I'm glad to see, along, with Pastor Kent physically being there, faith leaders calling out the moral issue. I would point out, anyway, I'll just stop there because Kent might have more to say.
Kent, would you mind taking us through more of your time there and what you were seeing, and then lead us up to the absolute horrors of Saturday?
Yeah. And thank you, Pastor Rich. I think you highlight important things, that even if you voted for this administration, you got lied to. Mm-hmm. Kentuckians in particular, I speak from my own experience from Central Kentucky. The president was elected with the words, "I'll never cut Medicaid." Kentucky receives, percentage-wise, we have a lot of Medicaid recipients because we were one of the poorest states in the union. And a lot of folks wanted change, and they saw that this administration was promising that they would take away that critical support. And look what happened. $400 million so far and counting, and going up. SNAP benefits eviscerated and counting, right? So it's okay, as Pastor Rich said, it. You don't have to agree with me on everything, but they have lied to you too. They've lied to the conservative folks who elected.
Yeah, those people that voted for Trump because they believed his promises. Yeah. It's okay to say, I believed him, and now I realize that he lies.
Right. Actions. When you have the choice between words and actions, which are you more likely to believe? What's more trustworthy? Actions. How you act. And I think
that's almost Christian. I mean, it was this person named Jesus of Nazareth, whose name I've invoked again, who said a tree is known by their fruits.
That's right.
If we have do you get grapes from thorn bushes?
You do not. You do not.
Yeah. Yeah. So harm, right? Again, like the stripping of rights and stuff, the harm that causes down. I've said this in a public speech recently. The umbrella of abuse is what I'm calling, is just casting a wider and wider and wider shadow over more and more demographics of people.
That's right.
And so
and the clergy, clergy witnessing to that. I think that you're right. This is not a political movement. This is a moral movement.
Absolutely.
Right.
This is not a partisan movement. This is an ethical movement.
Absolutely.
This is a constitutional movement. In other words, the only reason we can have political parties is because we have a constitution that protects free speech. Take away free speech, we do not have any parties.
Right.
They will not matter. Your position, pro, con, or indifferent, will not matter. The state will start giving you your opinion and telling you if and when they would like you to repeat it, and just how loud.
Yeah. So we see this particularly, if I may just point this out, right? We see this particularly in the way that women are portrayed and treated in the ideological movement of the far right, which is now centered in the federal government, right? That basically this kind of attitude where the man, as the so-called head of the household, right, will say, well, to the woman, well, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Yeah. Or the concept that some right-wing Christian pastors are pushing, that women shouldn't actually have the right to vote, that actually the man should vote as a household unit.
I've met people while I'm out campaigning who say they don't vote. Oh no, they don't vote. It's their religion.
Kind of one of my pastoral initiatives and senses of call, though, is to point out connection pieces between this. So where else in the structure of our society have we seen the male voting as a head of a household? Well, it's in the original Constitution, where those who owned other human beings and enslaving them were able to vote as the head of the household, and that all of their enslaved human beings were 3/5. They got extra votes.
Yeah.
So the connecting points, propagandizing and lying to the public, right, is not so that you believe what the government is saying. It's so that you don't believe anything.
Right.
You don't believe your own eyes and ears. You don't believe your neighbor, right? And so I think that's why this is really important what we're doing, because Kent is my colleague and my friend, and we work together in a council of churches. We're pastoral colleagues, right? And he's there. So people are there. Sarah, you know me, right? Been to your home with my wife, right? We know each other, right? And so the coming together in connection for fact and for truth, and where truth is the kind of thing that makes us accountable to each other, right? It makes us have to guess and say, wait a minute, are we right here? Are we in the right? Are we in the moral right? That is stripped away. So because people don't believe anything. It's one more thing.
This is a good point. This is not about politics anymore.
No,
and we need to stop the Democrat, Republican, the left versus right. We need to put that down, and we all need to stand together and unite and say this is wrong. Yeah. And I think you all are phrasing that really well. And, religion is one good way to do it. And I'm very thankful for people like the two of you and all the others that are stepping up that are in Minneapolis right now. And then there are clearly regular people are coming out, and you've said training. We need training to come out to know how to handle being nonviolent, which what Rich pointed out isn't always peaceful. I just want to I don't think people realize how hard that is. I went to the Civil Rights Museum when I was dating my husband 10 years ago. And in that museum in Memphis, Tennessee, they have a section where you can sit at a diner and reenact what it was like when they're getting called things and they're getting spit on and they're getting shouted the worst words and because is only for whites only to be in that diner. And they just played a recording of people shouting at me. And I was starting to cry just sitting in a museum on a fake booth having people shout at me in a recording. So I think it's important to realize this is hard. If you haven't done it before, you do need training for it, because your initial reaction is to protect yourself and those around you. And that's what you can't do because you're trying to shine a light on this injustice. So, we just need to step back and be more human, because there's so much online hate. There's so much of, we don't care that this person died. He deserved to die. He had a gun. He was all these lies about this human being. And I see it happening to women all the time. If they're not 100% perfect, then they deserve all the guilt and shame and punishment. And we need to stop doing that. And we need to realize we're all human and we're not perfect. And most of us are good people. And that's what's crushing me with all of this, is the comments after, the justifying of this murder.
Yeah, and I think that's the authoritarian playbook, right? Which is it didn't happen. Okay, it did happen, but it didn't happen the way you thought it did. Oh, it did happen the way you thought it did, but they deserved it, right? You discredit the victim. The next step is, it did happen the way you thought it did. The person did deserve it. We're not sorry about it, and you're a traitor for disbelieving us. That's the next step. And my friends, we are dangerously close. And certainly here in this city, just watching the reaction of the local Border Patrol commander talk about how this man showed up with a 9mm gun, which is, first of all, not something you would divulge before an investigation had even happened.
Right.
Lied about the fact that he possessed it and pointed it at them. Lied about the fact that he was a known criminal. Besmirched him and said that he was attacking them and that they were probably being targeted. All of these lies were all about saying, it did. Yeah, a terrible thing happened, but they deserved it. They deserved it. They deserved it. And that is this. And then when the guy stood up, their commander stood up, he said, well, this is, they just had to, there was that's their training. And okay, that's very close to, we're proud of it.
Yeah. And so, and then to label I'll go back to, I hope you guys pick up, right? I'm trying to also emphasize structure and systems. So the labeling somebody as a leftist terrorist, right? Or in the McCarthy years in the 50s, again, most Americans have a we have amnesia as a society for lots of reasons. Well, we've been segregated and separated even after 1954 Brown Board versus Board of Education, so on and so forth. We still live in a segregated society. Our churches are segregated, so on and so forth. So there are two, as Dr. King said, two Americas. But back to this point, or at least two, there's probably three or four now. When the government has the ability to begin labeling somebody, you're a communist, you're a leftist radical terrorist, you're whatever, is all for the purpose of dehumanizing. And dehumanizing is not just an adjective word, right? It is a structural and intentional process of authoritarianism. Because if you are not fully human, right, then it strips away from collective, right, conscience and awareness of other human beings, individuals and groups of people. It strips us away and justifies the treatment of other people by dehumanizing, lowering them. So one scholar would say this, that the fundamental civic unit of the world is the concept of the neighbor, right? Now, the political concept of a human being, as another scholar would say, is the concept of a citizen. So every time that you strip away the identity of human beings from being a neighbor, and you have to define people's humanity by concept of citizen, is all intended, right, to lower how we see other people. And dehumanizing is to see them as less than.
Yeah.
So, we have seen every wave of immigration that has come to this nation after the white Anglo-Saxon, establishment, right, in this country has been called vermin, poisoning the blood of America, darkening America, right? This language is consistent all through our history, and we're seeing it now with a wider and wider umbrella.
Right.
So if we can pause here, I just want to pull out again information. Like if you need information about training, right? Information, check out the folks at marchminnesota.org, marchminnesota.org. Check out the folks at freedomtrainers.net. Look up your local SURGE chapters, which is an acronym for Showing Up for Racial Justice. ACLU provides trainings, other groups. There's trainings today from dozens and dozens of groups locally and nationally. And our folks over at IsaiahMN.org, Isaiah like the prophet with the letters MN. So it's IsaiahMN from Minnesota.org. They're doing tremendous work out there. Just want to point that out again. Don't let us be separated from our neighbors,
right,
from fellow humans, right?
It's an easy trick. As soon as they're trying to make you convinced that other people are others and not human, that's when that's when this is propaganda to separate and divide. And to fit, they're less than. Yeah. All right. Pastor, can you take us through Saturday? So you were there in Minneapolis. You're out there with the protesters. Right. Can you take us through what happened on Saturday?
Yeah. So Friday, we'd had this amazing march, and there was no violence, and there was a lot of angry Minnesotans, and nobody got out of hand. There was a huge response. And the next morning, I think we were all taking a deep breath. I was out to breakfast with the people who graciously agreed to host me, and came back from breakfast to the news that Alex Preddy had, we didn't know him at the time, but that a man had been shot on the street. And lots of confusion, lots of sadness. Immediately, though, I want to emphasize what you both have said. Neighbors heard the shot, and I spoke with a young man who lived 2 blocks away. He heard the shot, and he heard the whistles. Everyone here is carrying whistles, and they blow them whenever anybody sees ice. Neighbors protect neighbors. Neighbors show up for neighbors. That's just true. And here, the way they do that is everybody's carrying a whistle at all times. I've not seen a single Minnesotan that doesn't have a whistle on their parka, around their neck, in their pocket. He heard the whistles. He heard the shot. He ran toward the noise. because I knew my neighbors would need me. This is a person who is exercising faith, even if they never go to church, because what they knew was that they needed to lead with that love. And they showed up, and within minutes of this shooting, there were 300-400 people from surrounding blocks who were taking video and blowing whistles and telling the agents that they were absurd and needed to leave, and what were they doing, and where was the medical care, and why wasn't an ambulance called. The agents, those of you who've watched the very disturbing videos, and I urge people to be circumspect about your tolerance, that you can see the murder of a man if you wish to.
Yeah.
And it is not an easy thing. So, but it is important. It is an important thing for those who are able, because what it shows is how callous and how dehumanized these agents had already assigned this unhuman character to anybody. You can see on the screen right now a picture that was the front page of the Minnesota Star Tribune. They've detained kids as young as 5. They used children as bait, holding them hostage for their parents to come out of their houses where they were hiding and afraid. And they kidnapped their kids from school and made them come out to get them, and then arrested them. Here is a person who is already on the ground, already under control, already in restraints, and they, at point blank range, firing chemicals, pepper spray, and nerve gas into his face. You can't do that to a neighbor. You show up for your neighbors with hot dish. You show up with care and warm blankets. You come when there's a need. You can't do this to another person you think of as human. So on Saturday, the neighborhood gathered, and in fact, very quickly, the agents were surrounded, and they began firing these chemical weapons into the crowd. And I do say chemical weapons because they're not just using tear gas. They're also using, you saw earlier slide, they're using what's probably chlorohexane, which is an industrial byproduct that leaves you coughing. If you have asthma, it will kill you. If you have a breathing difficulty, it will kill you. And they were firing this toxic green gas in clouds. They covered probably 3-4 square blocks as they tried to get out. Now, that's deplorable, but the more remarkable thing I want to highlight is that neighbors came together for each other, and they had to fire their way out. It's the first time in I think, any recent action history where ICE didn't feel like they had the upper hand. They felt like they had to get out, and they were scared enough and fragile enough that they had to do it any way they could. The neighbors set up safe zones immediately. The neighbors opened their restaurants and started feeding the people who came out to be supportive. They surrounded Alex Preddy and his body and kept the space. It's you're getting pictures of my dogs.
Very cute.
Because, well, and this is important to say, that my wife sent me pictures of the dogs to keep me grounded, to remind us that there is also love in the world despite all these images of hate.
Yeah.
And so, that's another way we in the trauma world remind each other to stay connected to joy, to stay connected to love, because that's resistance too. We can't let ourselves lose sight of those things. And
we can't lose our humanity in seeing theirs.
Yeah. And here what you see is this is Saturday night. This is Sunday night. This is the memorial at the spot where he died. People holding vigil, and it's been 24/7 vigil since his murder.
Yeah.
Clergy in our group went, and we have been on shifts at the site offering prayer. And in a case last night, colleagues of mine, there were agitators who were very upset about the fact that traffic had not been stopped. And that's I have mixed feelings about that. In part, it's because I want people to drive by and see this acts of compassion, but they felt it was disrespectful, and there were some people starting to get upset and hot about that. And the clergy who had been trained in a song, one of the other actions that we took on Friday was 250 clergy occupied a Target store. Target is a nationwide store chain based here in Minneapolis, and they have allowed ICE into their stores. They have allowed ICE to use their parking facilities to stage their vehicles. And our ask was that they stop that this is a nationwide company and this is a nationwide problem. And we wanted Target to be non-cooperative. We wanted them to be respectful of Fourth Amendment rights. We wanted them to not allow searches and seizure in their stores. And the singing training gave everybody songs. And by golly, 4 of my colleagues were there when things started to get hot, and they started singing and the crowd joined them and everybody's temperature dropped.
That's really beautiful. So there's trained people out there with calming everybody down, calming the temperature down, because it very quickly could get dangerous. Because we are traumatized and horrified. I mean, so I'm just really thankful to everybody that's out there pushing that love and peace and calm down and yeah, I'm thankful that you all are doing that. Okay, now I've been seeing on the news that National Guard, that Governor Tim Walz has brought the National Guard to try to be a barrier between Border Patrol and ICE and the peaceful protesters. Have you heard of any of it? Have you seen it? I saw a story where National Guard were bringing coffee, hot chocolate, and donuts to the people protesting. Yeah, can you tell us what that's like there?
Yeah, Sunday morning, the governor called out the National Guard, and they formed about 5 blocks away in every direction from this site. They formed a perimeter. A soft perimeter. They're not blocking traffic. They're not blocking access, but they have stations there. And what they have said is that ICE is not allowed in this neighborhood after 2 extrajudicial killings, after many untrained and undisciplined attacks and abductions. ICE may not enter this zone. So they are allowing others in. They are on the corners. They're passing out donuts and hot chocolate, and the neighborhood restaurants are feeding them. The neighborhood, the Somalis, which have been so maligned by our administration as the cause of why they had to come here with 3,000 agents for a Somali community. The Somali community had fed all of us, all of our faith leaders after the march in gratitude for coming.
So the people being portrayed as violent and awful are in here giving all of themselves as much as they can to help this community. And that is the beautiful thing that I wanted to talk about on the show today, because we are so traumatized at this point. And we know more's coming. And so for you to tell us that story and you to be there, I just really thank you, because we need this as a nation. We need this to know that this is happening. So right now, are you hopeful, Pastor Kent, that there will be less violence because of the National Guard? Do you see it working?
I don't know what to think about it, Sarah, and it's a really powerful question, because of course this administration is looking for an excuse to do far more and far worse, right? What they've tested here in Minnesota, they've already deployed to Maine. They're already thinking about Seattle. We know this because a buddy of mine is a pilot, and he reported to me last week that all of their pilot rooms at the Seattle airport, at the hotels, have been canceled for February because ICE, Department of Homeland Security, has purchased the entire hotel for the month. So that tells us that they are planning more and worse.
So you say it looks like they're sending more.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if they're sending more to Minnesota, but they certainly are they're planning to do actions like this elsewhere. And what they're counting on is that they can push somebody far enough that they can blame any violence on whether it be the Minnesota National Guard or clergy protesters or a Somali community. They're looking for somebody to blame so that they can, quote unquote, excuse the next step. And if you dehumanize people, the next step from gas attacks is live fire.
Yeah.
And
So can I jump in here as we're over an hour on a couple of things? No, it's Sarah's the boss. This is just a show she lets me have. Let me say a couple of things about what Ken's emphasizing here. So when we get to the place of saying the next step's live fire, there's a lot of people that think that the administration has said already, and people are calling for white supremacist groups actually are calling for the Insurrection Act to be invoked, right? So I want to point out that what's happening here is you have at least two, and sometimes more than two, multiple armed government agencies standing, in a sense, in opposition to each other. Now, many of us have some issues with police practices and stuff. That's not the issue right now. The issue is federal oversight in the Department of Homeland Security through ICE abusing people, right? And killing people. But what happens potentially when you have state or local armed agents of the government and federal agents that come into direct live fire situations? So that's a problem people should be working out for. So
that's what I'm like, this is.
But let me finish,
wild.
please. Let me finish. So the discipline of those who are trained and practice nonviolence, we know that the discipline of nonviolence precipitates crisis and tension on purpose with discipline and spiritual grounding to show there is the moral and ethical issues going on here, right? And knows that the state and oppressors understand violence. Okay, if somebody was to do an act of violence, right, the government, this regime, right, knows how to respond to violence. That's obvious. There's over 3,000 ICE agents in Minnesota, and Minneapolis, and there's only 600 local law enforcement. So if people care about whatever narrative of the United States of America they were raised with, people need to start to say, this is not right, period. That's one piece. I want to reemphasize to people to get trained. Go to freedomtrainers.net. IsaiahMN.org has resources. March Minnesota, okay? ACLU has chapter trainings. LSurge here in the Louisville area has trainings. I mentioned that really importantly to us. Other piece I want to bring up real quick is some action items. You brought up, and KentuckyNeighborsClinic.org provides legal services out of Lexington to 119. That's a group I'm going to be supporting financially. Okay. I'm going to point something else out. You mentioned Target, right? The fourth largest employer in the state of Minnesota, and you mentioned the airport stuff. So the organizers in Minnesota are asking us to write to Target, talk to Target about not allowing ICE to stage in their parking lots, to get engaged with Home Depot. What are the airlines that are providing transportation for ICE or deporting people to places like Kentucky? A number of our county jails here in Kentucky are holding ICE detainees. That should concern us. So we sometimes call these, right, pillars of support. So if you have an oppressive situation going on here, right, what supports and undergirds that? People can't move without transportation. So Enterprise Rental Car. You can engage them and say, hey, stop renting out these vehicles. You can engage with Hilton Hotels, selling out their hotels for why should they be doing this, right? If they're for the citizenry of the United States. Target, Home Depot, Walmart. So information about that is available at iceoutforgood.org, iceoutforgood.org, if people are looking for ways to get active. The other piece is this week, I believe it's tomorrow, the United States Senate, the most powerful deliberative body in the entire world, the United States Senate, right, is starting the voting debates, could vote as early tomorrow on funding for the government, ICE. For ICE. And so we would call on those people of good conscience, Republicans, independents, people like me who are not allowed to live in participation with democratic process. I mean that seriously, okay, to call your senators, right, to make disciplined noise and demand that ICE is not funded, period.
Yeah.
And I would reiterate to friends all across the spectrum, the stripping away of the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, 14th Amendment, so on and so forth, right, is a direct threat to the concept of liberty. We've never lived into this concept in this nation, but we do have an opportunity to look to Minnesota and what they've been doing in nonviolent direct action with people from all different expressions, and even political expressions, religious expressions, and no religious expressions, to say simply this is not right. So again, get engaged with the reality that the United States Senate is voting on funding, and exercise your First Amendment right to say no to this. Okay.
Yeah.
Look at Target, look for other resources.
Yep, those are good.
We can only do so much in an hour, but as we wrap up,
thank you.
Sarah,
And I think you guys did a lot of like good hope. There's things we can do. We can train ourselves into how to lead a nonviolent movement. We can shine a light on this. We can get our friends and neighbors and family to collectively say this is wrong and this is scary and we need to shine a light on it. So you've given us a lot of things, and I thank you so much for both of you. Pastor Kent, what I would love for you to do, I know over the next few weeks and days, you're going to be processing all that you've seen this week. Sure. I would love for you to jot down the hopeful stories and the horrible story, anything that that has meaning to you. I would like you to jot them down, and I would love for you to come back on the show and tell me all of them. We want to know, if you wouldn't mind. I would love to have you back on. We can put any more pictures you want, show them again. We want to know, what is it actually like there? Because it helps us to see the picture, because there's so much propaganda.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. What a wonderful human being. I feel really privileged to have got to spend this time with you. Another thing I want to point out, around 1:30 today, I'm going to be doing a live interview show with Pastor Chris Lance. He was on the show a few months ago. He is doing an like a prayer vigil calling out against this in Indiana, where there is a detainment center where they're detaining human beings. And so they're going to have the whole thing's going to be live, and he's going to share where we can watch that live. But I'm going to do an interview with him beforehand on why he's doing this, what is going on in Indiana, because we don't have what's happening in Minneapolis, but we do have prisons set up as these detainment centers happening in our state. Our state government, our like local and state police and stuff, has been very helpful in working with ICE. So we're having a different thing here than what is happening in that state. So
and so Sarah, it's probably good to just mention, when you're talking about your state, you're talking about Indiana, and Pastor Kent and I are pastors in Kentucky. But for those who don't know the geography, right?
Yeah. So in Indiana, it's a very red, supermajority red state that Governor Mike Braun really seems to like.
But I was just,
it's different. It's different.
Wanted to point out that there's this little thing called the Ohio River that separates Louisville.
I'm at the bottom of Indiana, right close to you.
Right. And I'm at the top of Kentucky.
Kentucky.
And Pastor Kent's in the middle of Kentucky. So
I
wondered if we could, this is something we haven't done, Sarah, but I feel I'm feeling a lot from you guys. People are feeling a lot of feels right now. And just affirm, like, if what you're feeling. Be gentle with yourself.
Yes.
Be bold. I'm going to say to folks, as a pastor, be bold in your story. Be bold in your witness, and gentle and humble toward others. I also just want to lift up, I know Pastor Chris Lance, obviously, lift up a prayer and say, may God bless and protect those efforts up there. And then for our dear brother Kent, that there's some old words from the Hebrew Bible that say, may the Lord bless him and protect him. May the Lord's face shine on him with grace and with mercy. And may the Lord look on him with favor and grant him and all of those gathered for the purpose of loving your neighbors as yourself. May peace be with you along the way. And I want to throw this last phrase in here from Jesus of Nazareth, who said, blessed are the peacemakers. They shall be called children of God. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, you too. Love to you both. Please stay safe. Love to everybody hurting right now. Love to everybody traumatized. You are not alone. You are not alone. We are in this together, and we're gonna keep trying. Yeah. And you guys have a wonderful day, and have a safe flight home.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
And
you, Sarah.
I
Thank you,
hope to
Pastor
have you
Rich.
on again. And you have my cell number, and please consider me a friend, and call or message anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, for bringing the most beautiful people onto Project Next to share their stories. It's been really wonderful. I'm just so glad I called you and convinced you to do this show with me.
All right, peace and love. Let's hug each other, man. If you're listening out there, if you're a rage baiter in the comments, hey, listen, man, we ain't mad at you. We are
Love
talking
to you
about
too.
we're talking about neighbors, man. People.
Right.
Hug your family, hug your dog, your cat, your snake, or your lizard, whatever you got. If the snake talks to you, don't hug it.
But troll comments like
yeah, man. Listen,
love to you guys. Love
absolutely.
to you. I know this is scary.
You can change. You don't have to be filled with anger and hate.
Amen.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like this. There's a better way forward, man.
Amen.
So say hi to a neighbor. It's cold outside. If you're outside,
check on your neighbors. Make sure everybody's okay.
Shovel your neighbor's driveway or something if you can, or bake a cookie for somebody. But show a little bit of love and let random acts of kindness along the way
be our resistance. That is our way, right?
Yes.
That the very thing that's being destroyed is the very thing we know best, how to be our neighbor's friend.
Yeah.
That's all.
Say to hell with this. We're looking upwards to whatever is heavenly. And the basic line of heavenliness is the ability to share kindness and goodness and cookies. And even if you know somebody that's mean and grumpy all the time, which would be me before I have coffee, maybe tell them, you know what? Here's a cookie or something. I don't know. But, listen, stop being sour, a little sweetness in your life. We ain't mad at you. We just want a better world and society for all people. Amen.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good way to say it. I try to give love to the commenters at the end. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's been interesting the last few weeks since our YouTube has gotten a little bit bigger. Yeah. All right, you all. Love you guys. Love you all. Peace. Love to everybody. Have a good day, and I'll be back around 1:30 today. Bye, everybody.
Bye.